So last December, Wired posted a long piece claiming that Australian entrepreneur Craig Wright was Satoshi Nakamoto, the creator of Bitcoin. Wired claimed that if Wright wasn't Satoshi Nakamoto, he was surely doing his best to pretend that he was. Now, Motherboard and other sites did some research that pointed to the theory that Wright was pretending to be, that Wright himself wasn't talking about whether he was or wasn't the creator of Bitcoin. And not long after the Wired piece came out, Wright's home was raided, possibly for unrelated reasons. Today on his personal blog, Wright himself claimed that he was Satoshi Nakamoto. Russell Brandom from The Verge is here to talk about this story. Welcome, Russell.
Thanks for having me.
So you say that Wright's claims don't add up. What can you tell us about that?
So part of the thing about looking for Satoshi Nakamoto is there are a couple basic cryptographic things he can do. You know, if you are Satoshi, you can sign using this private key that we know only Satoshi has, or you can spend this Bitcoin that we know only Satoshi has access to. And so when he wrote this post, Wright seemed to be doing that. He said, okay, here's this cryptographic signature that, we know only Satoshi has, and so I'm signing this message with it. But then it turned out, as people looked at it more, this was a signature that Satoshi had used in the blockchain in 2009. And so someone had found it and sort of futzed with it a little bit and then just appended it to this new document. So it really doesn't show anything. I mean, and the puzzling thing is not just that it doesn't show anything, but that Wright was clearly presenting it as if it did. So we're kind of back at square one. I mean, the other thing is a lot of very prominent people in the Bitcoin community, including Gavin Andresen, say that they saw a more extensive and convincing version of the proof in which he was signing things with his private key, and we were seeing all of these other things that were the real proof that we would want from Satoshi. But none of that's been publicly verified, and it's basically just this demo that they saw, and then he destroyed all the evidence from it. So it's kind of back where we started. Like, I think people who believe that he is Satoshi are going to keep believing that, and they have more evidence to believe that. And I think people who were skeptical about it, I think, are now more skeptical than ever.
So why would he claim this? Just ego, or is there some other reason?
So that's part of the puzzle. He's certainly, we know that he is working, well, rumor has it that there is a prominent biographer who has signed on to write his biography as the biography of Satoshi Nakamoto, right? I mean, you can imagine that there's a lot of interest in such a book being published, and there's a lot of money to be made there. We also know that he is very interested in a supercomputer business, and that supercomputer business has certainly been getting a lot more attention from investors now that he's known as a possible Satoshi Nakamoto, at least. I think people who believe him are eager to invest in it, and people who don't believe him are sort of, they are continuing to stay away from it. So I don't know that I buy that. Like, I don't know that I actually buy that all of this has been a net positive attention for him. And I also think that he's certainly said, well, look, people are bothering me. People are bothering my family and the people that I work with. And this is terrible. And I just want to clear the air and make it stop. And that does sound, on the face of it, plausible to me. But I don't know.
So do they know when his house was raided back in December? Was it related or unrelated, or do we not know?
It seems like there are tax issues, but there are sort of confidentiality issues that are preventing the police from saying. I think it's sort of still in process enough that he has rights as an Australian citizen that prevent them from talking about what the nature of the investigation is. It's sort of an innocent until proven guilty situation. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I also think the weird thing for me, if you asked me, is this guy Satoshi? He's now saying he's Satoshi. So and there's other people who are saying he is too, which is more than we had back in December. But we also know that it should be really easy to prove that you're Satoshi Nakamoto. And the public proof that he gave is basically fake. Like, it's as if someone gave you a fake $20 bill and they're saying they're a millionaire. And the fact that they gave you a fake $20 bill doesn't prove that they're not a millionaire. But I'm certainly a lot less inclined to believe it now that sort of people have successfully called shenanigans on the one sort of basic thing that he was doing to establish this publicly.
So what you say is that what's missing is the math. Can you explain that more? Or would you have to be Satoshi Nakamoto to be able to explain it?
Well, no. So, I mean, this is the basic thing about cryptography and about Bitcoin is that it's the math. This was how one prime example of this was the Silk Road trial. They said, well, how do we know that this guy really is the Dread Pirate Roberts? We know so little about the Dread Pirate Roberts. This is, well, this key was the key they used to sign Dread Pirate Roberts' messages, and he has it. And I think people are waiting for the same thing with Satoshi. It could be more than one person. It could be, we know absolutely nothing about him except that he had possession of these Bitcoins and he had the ability to sign these messages in this way, right? And so if nothing else is true of this guy, he should be able to do one of those things. And it should be, if he is Satoshi, it should be very easy for him to do one of those things. And he should have a lot of options of mathematical proofs that he can offer. And I think this is also a way of kind of talking to the Bitcoin community in their own language, is saying, we're not about authority, we're not about external say-sos, this is about sort of the math. And so, yeah, I mean, he should have the private key, or he should have the sort of hash for the Bitcoin. And there's some explanations about why that's not what he's doing. I mean, his claim is that this Bitcoin, which is worth hundreds of millions of dollars now, is in a trust for tax reasons so that he doesn't have to pay some exorbitant tax on it, which is possibly what the Australian thing is about. Like, I mean, that could be the charges against him. But he should really be able to, like, move it around so that it's still in a trust, but now it's in this other wallet, and the other wallet's also in the trust. But he can say, well, on this date and time, I moved this much money from here to here, and then that much money moves, and we're saying, well, okay, clearly at least he knew it was going to happen, so he must know the guy who was going to do this, and that guy must have participated in this verification. And that would be completely airtight. It would, if you want to shut up the loudmouth critics like me, that's all you have to do. And people have been saying this for years, and we're still saying it.
Well, Mike, you're being awfully quiet. Are you Satoshi Nakamoto?
Actually, yeah. I mean, I wasn't going to say it on this episode. I wasn't going to, steal thunder. But I just don't understand, A, if Satoshi is one person, why he hasn't or she hasn't just revealed himself, and B, why it really matters.
Good question.
Well, it's a mystery. You want to know, right? I mean, I think people say, well, it doesn't matter. But it's still this guy who did this stuff and has potentially all this money. I'm curious. I'll admit, yes. I'm very curious about who he is. And as a journalist, it's hard to say, like, well, they say it's this guy. Maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. Who knows?
I totally believe in debunking guys who say stuff like that. But, like, I don't know. Who invented the dollar? Like, the actual currency? I don't know. I saw some weird hot take about that today. And it's
I haven't seen Hamilton, so I'm not.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, does knowing who he is give some legitimacy to Bitcoin, or does, if it were Craig Wright, who also might have, invented a lot of other things, does it give it less legitimacy?
Well, I think we know that at the very least, this is a really interesting idea that has spurred a lot of people to do a lot of stuff. I mean, I think I'm generally a Bitcoin skeptic, but I think at the very least, this was a really interesting idea that got a lot of sort of brains working, right? So, I mean, I think the value of the work is at this point not really in that much question. I think the interesting thing is, and you see this with a lot of open source communities. I mean, I think big projects like this, whether it's Tor or Wikipedia or Linux, a lot of the times you need a kind of political leader that everyone can rally around, and they say, okay, this is what we're doing now. And I think Bitcoin is in some ways at a moment like that, we've seen this dispute over block size and a kind of, I mean, I think some people called it a civil war within Bitcoin that was for a while really preventing people from transacting, making transactions at scale, which is the thing that you need to do as a currency system. And so I think there is this idea of, okay, if someone came out and said, I'm Satoshi, and it seems to me like you guys do what you want, but it seems to me like this is what Bitcoin needs, and I would be happy if people did that. I think that would be politically useful for the community in various ways. But also then I think that makes some of the declarations we've seen a little suspect. So you have these major members of the Bitcoin community who are coming forward and saying, you know what, I'm sold. This guy's Satoshi. And you have to kind of wonder if that's what they're thinking too, is, well, okay, Satoshi or not, we need someone like this.
Exactly. Well, it's interesting from a privacy perspective. I mean, we're told all the time, like, you can't hide from anyone anymore. But it seems like it's not only easy to hide, but hard to reveal yourself as well at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not as hard as he's making it sound. I think there are a lot of things. So the founder of Litecoin had a Medium post that I think confused some people. But basically, he said, I'm the founder of Litecoin, and then had the hashes for the various blocks that were the first blocks that he mined because he was the only one who knew about the project. And just sort of, hey, by the way, here's this number that I have because I'm the founder of Litecoin. And I mean, he just posted this 3-line post on Medium, but it was implicitly he was saying, well, okay, if you're the founder of Bitcoin, you have this on your hard drive somewhere. So what's the problem? I don't know.
Right.
It's tricky.
Well, Russell, thank you so much for joining us. Russell Brandom,
my pleasure.
He writes for The Verge. He's at Russell Brandom on Twitter. And you have some other stories today that you posted. You've been busy writing all day, so go check out his stuff at The Verge. Thanks so much for coming on.
Have a good one.
You too.